Hello, BookTube. I've been waiting so long to be able to say this, but today's book review comes to you courtesy of the letter A. Apologies to anyone if that caused a bit of confusion. I finished a TBR list at the end of 2025 and I began a new one for 2026, and I called it Alphabet Soup because I had pulled books off my shelves where the author's surname began with a different letter of the alphabet. And today's book is celebrating an author whose surname begins with the letter A. So today we will be reviewing Ace of Spades, a YA psychological thriller by Faridah Àbíké Íyímídé. And that was published in 2021. I don't know where I heard about this book. Probably from BookTube. I don't know how else I would have got it as a recommendation. I didn't buy it in a bookshop. It looks like I bought it from Amazon. And usually when that happens, it means somebody has mentioned the book to me, said it's good, and I've been keen to read it. But I did not make a note. If it was a BookTube creator who recommended this book to me, and it almost certainly was, I didn't record who that was. So my apologies to whoever enthused about Ace of Spades and recommended it to me, because I've really enjoyed the book, and now I can't thank you with a shout out, which I would normally like to do. And as you see at the bottom there, it is my Alphabet Soup TBR, so I have 26 books on that TBR and 26 months to read them. This is number 1 as it happens, and it just happens to be sponsored by the letter A, but I will not necessarily follow through this TBR list in alphabetical order. So the next book I read, I believe this author's surname begins with H. So I'm going to wander all over the alphabet, but the point is, after 26 months, I'm hoping to have read all 26 books, one way or another, in some kind of order. The author, Faridah Àbíké Íyímídé, she was born in 1998 in London. She has a personal website that is, I like it because it's businesslike and also whimsically funny. I laughed out loud because there was a link right at the top of the homepage marked long biography. And if you click on it, you get about 8 lines of text. It just made me laugh. I thought, oh, that's the long biography. My goodness, I wonder what the short one is like. And if you visit the website, you'll also learn that she drinks an average of 10 cups of tea per day and loves frogs and all things frog related. But back to the stats. She went to the University of Aberdeen, where she got her Bachelor of Arts in English Literature, and then she went on to King's College London to get her MA in Shakespeare Studies. So this is her first book, Ace of Spades. Now she's working on, or has finished, a new book called The Heirs that's due to come out in June this year. Let's talk about the setting as a place. We are somewhere in the continental United States, and it's an urban location, and it's one of those urban locations where you've got different neighborhoods that define your socioeconomic class if you live there. And there's a nearby beach, but there's very little description of landscapes or seasons or weather. I think I recall it rained once, and I recall that a character had to wear a beret one day because it was cold, but there's no description of ice or snow. So my guess, and it is a guess, is that we're probably on the Pacific rather than the Atlantic coast. If you really pushed me, I'd say Northern California, maybe. But I'm not certain that Àbíké Íyímídé had a specific location in mind. And for the purposes of this story, locational exactness, it's not essential. In terms of time, we are in the 21st century. We are after 2006 because Twitter exists, but we are before 2023 because it's still called Twitter. And it's also before COVID. And that's because it's never mentioned. And given the number of schools that closed in the United States during lockdown, I just cannot imagine a book set in a high school that doesn't talk at all about the pandemic if it wasn't part of their history. What else is important to know about the setting? Well, it takes place during the senior year at a high school. Now, this is a private academy, okay? One of those impressive premises of a certain age. And here, I think my California theory might break down, because I believe there was something in the text which suggested that the school's history went back into the 19th century. And I think that's a little early for Northern California. There are expensive tuition fees that are required. And we have some students that are there on scholarship. And the scholarship doesn't quite cover all their costs, but most of their costs. And also, every student has a smartphone, and the numbers of those phones are registered with the school as part of the data they keep on file for each student. Regarding viewpoint, the novel is written in first person, and there are two narrators, Devon and Chimaka. Now, Devon was born in the city that this school is, so he'd lived there all his life in one of the not so great neighborhoods. He's come in on a scholarship. Chimaka moved to the United States with her family from Europe before she was high school age. Okay. The chapters alternate between them. So you get Devon, Chimaka, Devon, Chimaka, Devon, Chimaka, tick tock, tick tock. So a little bit like a metronome beat or a heartbeat, or the clock ticking down on a time bomb. Any of those metaphors would be applicable. Number of characters. Well, each of our protagonists has their own little circle, and I'd say that is about 5 to 7 named characters, your close friends, teachers, other students that they happen to know. They also both have parents, and what is so cool about YA thrillers is that it can take advantage of that natural ambivalence and distance that can open up between teenagers and their parents. So what happens to Devon and Chimaka? It's serious, but they do not tell their parents. They don't tell them when the serious things first start, because even they believe it's just a prank. It doesn't mean anything. Ignore it and it will go away. And they don't think of it as something that's going to get much, much worse. Of course, then when it does get worse, when the tension and the jeopardy has built to a crisis level and the time bomb is ticking away, they still don't tell their parents, because now they're afraid of the burden of worry and additional responsibility that they're going to suddenly dump on their families. Mobility is interesting, and this is the other reason that YA thrillers work, because teenage characters naturally have limited mobility. They live where their families live. They can't just move when they want to. They may not be able to drive, or they may not own a car, even if they have a license. They're legally obliged to attend school, and they can be held for detention. And also their parents expect to know where they are if they're not in school or at home. And for our protagonists, on top of all this, there were very high expectations. This school, well, first of all, it's being paid for by their parents, and the school has this reputation for turning out candidates that go on to Ivy League universities. And so now there's all these opportunities, yes, for them to advance and make their mark in the school, but also it makes reputations very fragile objects. You know, one incident of poor judgment, one time when you're in the wrong place with the wrong people, and that could kill your hopes of social mobility. And these conditions are just perfect for a thriller, because you've got both your victims trapped in a worsening situation and they can't find any way of escape. Representation matters in Ace of Spades. Devon and Chimaka are the only black students in this very exclusive school. Devon is African American, and both his parents are black. Chimaka was born in Italy, and her father is Italian. Her mother is Nigerian. Chimaka has experienced racism from her Italian grandparents. She's never visited Nigeria. Her father is wealthy enough for them to be living in one of the more exclusive neighborhoods in the city where this story is set, whereas we know Devon's in a poorer neighborhood with his mother and his younger siblings. There are questions that need to be answered about his father, and those add to the novel's tension for Devon, as those facts are revealed gradually. When the novel opens, Devon and Chimaka, they know about each other in that way that non-white people will notice other non-white people in social situations which are mostly white. But they've never spoken to one another. They never had good reason to. As the story goes on, they get plenty of good reasons. Problematic content. Well, the publishers have outdone me here. Let me just say that for a start. All I was going to make clear was that the book has scenes of racism, homophobia, and sexism accompanied by violence or by the serious threat of violence. And there are also accidental deaths of minors and references to execution. There's also a description of possible non-consensual sex. Faridah's book is the first that I've seen, and those who've read more YA might think, oh, come on, this is typical. But it's the first I've seen that includes a content warning inside the front cover and also has a link to a page on the author's website, which is the problematic content page is exhaustive. It includes things I didn't realize maybe needed to be mentioned. So you might find in future reviews that my problematic content gets more finely grained as I learn from that webpage. The tension in this book builds and builds. It starts with small inconveniences and embarrassments, and it works its way up to full undisguised threat to reputations and or lives. If you can deal with that content, the pacing and the tension make Ace of Spades a really difficult book to resist reading. I had trouble putting it down. My rabbit hole today focuses on social media. Without giving away too much, I expect the ending of Ace of Spades might feel a little bit too much like Deus Ex Machina for some readers, because the adversary is not an individual, it's not a family, it's a system backed by a long-standing organization that has, well, a lot of resources at its disposal. How are two high school seniors going to be able to defeat that? And could you write a novel where they do in fact defeat it and call it realism? Your opinion is probably going to depend on whether you're optimistic or pessimistic about the issues that are raised in the novel. I wonder if the author's take on social media as a force for good is going to date this book in years to come. If we might look back from the vantage point of, say, 2035 and find that there's a more ambivalent attitude to the merits of social media as a force for protest or causing change. Personally, I wanted the ending to be true. Of course I did. Even though the cynical part of my 62-year-old self kind of knew that fiction was fiction in the case of this book. And also, I didn't read it as realism. I read it as speculative fiction that was posing the possibility, what if this situation actually existed in what seems to be an upstanding private school that offers scholarship places to less advantaged pupils. And when I read YA anyway, I try to imagine my younger mind. Well, my younger mind wouldn't even be bringing you this rabbit hole because it just wouldn't have had that depth at all. It would have wanted the good guys to win and the bad guys to lose. Simple as. It wasn't ready for nuance, although Ace of Spades offers nuance. If we move away from the central issue going on at the school, there are several characters in Devon's circle and Chimaka's who were good and bad and would be worthy of discussion. Chimaka's Italian father, for example. There doesn't seem to be any animosity between father and daughter, and yet Chimaka lets us know that she doesn't share with him her perspective on race and how it makes a difference to things in her everyday life, because he's failed to empathize in the past, and he's sometimes said that he thinks his daughter is overreacting or misinterpreting things. And with Devon, his mother kept a secret from him. And if a book group were discussing this novel, they could ask, was her choice kind or cruel or a bit of both? And that's it, everyone. That is the review done. In my description box, there will be links to Faridah's personal website, to another video where she pitches Ace of Spades, so you can get a bit more detail about how she sees the story, and also a link to that content warning if it is of interest. Okay, everyone, I'm going to go off now and write a Middlemarch meditation script, the next thing scheduled to be posted on YouTube. And in the meantime, have great reading. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you're just sick of winter weather, hang in there. I don't know what else to say. I am somehow surviving, but I really, really am looking forward to the spring this year. Okay, everyone, talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.